and welcome to the show. Joining me on the show today is Marie Royce Book, a hair and brow transplant specialist and patient advisor from the Wimpole Clinic in London. And we'll be talking about the rise in people having transplants. Then I talked to internationally renowned German classical singer and recording artist Friederike Krum to tell us all about her latest album, her upcoming concerts, and her work with the Cheltenham Pensioners. But first, let's speak to Marie. Marie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to see you. Now, you're a brow and hair transplant specialist. So for those who don't know, Marie, tell us a little bit about what that actually is.
Gosh.
Yeah, we've got some time.
I work at the Wimpole Clinic.
Yes.
And we specialise in hair transplants for both men and women. And there is a specialist field within hair transplants where we do eyebrow hair transplants. So it's a bit more intricate work and a bit more aesthetically involved in terms of fashions and how people want to restore their eyebrows now.
Because it's different versions. Now you've had your own transplant yourself, haven't you? On your brows, beautiful brows, may I say?
Thank
now,
you.
may I ask what the reason was, Marie, that you had that?
Oh gosh, I think I grew up in the 90s, and the fashion
don't say anymore.
was
That's right.
exactly
Yes.
overplucking.
Yes.
And then followed by tattooing and just daily wear of penciling in my eyebrows, really. So
It's amazing, really, how that can quickly just erode your natural hair follicles.
It is.
And it does it, presumably it does.
it does. The
Yes.
eyebrows are the most sensitive sort of hair on the body, and just little epilations or plucking can result in the permanent damage of the follicles to the brows, so permanent loss.
Wow, which is why presumably you're so busy in what you're doing.
We are, yes.
And with the brow transplants, it's a wide variety of shapes and sizes and different needs. Is it? But when people come to you though, just explain to us what happens. Is there a consultation period? Tell us about it.
There is a consultation period. So people usually begin by looking up, because they've never heard of an eyebrow hair transplant before, and they don't really know what it entails. So we get really excited, people potentially interested in having the hair transplant, but there's a lot of sort of limitations with the procedure that I have to sort of educate potential patients on. For example, we take hair from the back of the head, and so the eyebrow hairs will grow continuously. So you'll have to trim them.
Wow, I didn't realise that. So when you do the transplant, it's not just fixed; they will grow.
They
like
will grow
natural.
as if they were still on the back of your head, which is quite funny. But once you've gotten over that, it's a fantastic permanent solution that does look really, really natural. And with more updated techniques, which we have developed, we are seeing much more beautiful natural results, which for me are much better than tattooing.
Yes,
for sure.
And how long have you been doing this, Marie?
Well, I think I began in 2019 when I began my own journey into having the
And have you
procedure.
seen many changes, in what people are going for and different brows?
Yes, lots of changes.
So what's kind of in at the moment?
At the moment, it definitely was. There was a period where it was a very Bella Hadid sort of brow, a very elongated, almost Spock-like brow, which is very straight and elaborate. But now we're sort of returning to a more natural brow look. So we get often an Adele brow request, or Lily Collins is very famous for her bushy eyebrows. And of course, Carla Delevingne, her brows are very, very popular. So much thick, bushy brows.
Do people literally come to you and say, right, here's a picture?
They do.
Here we go. I want to look like this.
They do. We get a lot of, the popular names like the Kardashians.
Yes.
And I have to sort of understand exactly what they want with this picture, because a lot of the time the pictures are edited and it's makeup. They're not actually looking at eyebrows either. So really stripping back and understanding what they want in terms of the eyebrow shape and style.
And is it open to sort of everyone? Because, I mean, we are now in a world where, aesthetics are widely used now by both men and women, and you do this to men and women, don't you? So this is a treatment that's gaining more popularity.
Because it's become a lot more popular, so public figures like Chrissy Teigen have recently had the procedure, and you sort of look at the comments and you see people commenting, very vain procedure, but losing hair is very emotive subjects, and certainly when our male patients patients come in for eyebrow restorations, there's usually been some sort of trauma or psychological, battle that they've had to sort of fight to come to see me at the clinic. So, they suffer emotionally from the loss of brow hairs, whether that be female or male.
Do you look at somebody's face and say, oh, that brow would look really good on you? And even though they're perhaps presenting you with something that is not going to look good, do you tell them that? Do you talk to them about it?
Yes, I try to guide them into the most natural brow. I think, you can always edit your brow after the procedure to go with the trends, but having a nice classic brow shape that suits one's face is the best way forward. So often you'll see as we age, everything sort of sinks down, and the eyebrows will do that too, as well as the eyebrows lose as you age.
Oh, so you actually lose the follicles in your eyebrows?
You do, and it's one of the conceptions as us as humans sort of identify natural aging. So the darker eyebrows or the darker eye contrast you have, the younger you appear to another person, and the less, the older you appear.
That's interesting, which is why everyone goes for dark eyebrows.
Exactly.
Exactly. Have you seen changes in the way that the treatments are given, changes in perhaps how people perceive the treatments? I know there's a rising popularity to it, but has it changed from when you started, back in 2019?
It has changed. I have certainly witnessed a dramatic increase in the demand for the procedure. I think the social acceptance of having a hair transplant, not just an eyebrow hair transplant or even a beard transplant, has become a little bit more accepted by society. I sort of say it's a bit like getting your teeth done now. It's more widely accepted.
And you're quite right. 5 years ago, I mean, definitely it wasn't sort of talked about. No. Why do you think that is? What's happened?
I think, unfortunately, there were probably very old techniques or probably really bad hair transplants done previously, and that labelled the procedures, not a very good procedure to have done. But now the procedure is so seamless and it looks so natural.
Yes.
And
more celebrities are having it done.
Exactly.
And of course, when they put their posts on Instagram or TikTok, everybody wants to, be
copy.
Exactly like that. Exactly, copy
Yes.
it, exactly. But I mean, is hair transplants the same? Is it the same? Do you do as many hair transplants as you do brow transplants?
I would say we do more hair transplants, especially with men. Male hair transplants is very, very popular. Yeah. Men are, again, accepting that instead of just allowing themselves to go bald, because it is a globally genetic process of the reason why they lose hair.
Yes.
And rather than accepting it, there are medical interventions that they can do by taking medications or aesthetically through surgical procedures such as having hair transplants. So there's a solution for them. They don't have to suffer anymore.
And is the hair transplant, for instance, on a man, is that a long time, say, from a man with a bald head? How long was that process before they have their full head of hair? How long does it take? Months? Weeks?
So interesting. But the actual procedure itself is permanent.
Right.
Because men lose hair because, most men lose hair because of their genetic predisposition to their hair follicles being sensitive to testosterone, essentially. So it's something called DHT.
Right.
And the top of the scalp, these follicles absorb this potent DHT, which means the hairs begin to miniaturize and shrink. So when we do a hair transplant, we actually take follicles that do not have the receptors to the DHT. So when we remove these hairs, they're permanent, so it's a permanent procedure. It isn't immediate results. You've got to be patient, and to see the final results, it can take anywhere up to a year to 18 months.
Really? Yes. And that presumably because you're allowing for that hair follicle to grow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, have you work, I know, with celebrity clients. Do you find, though, that they're more relaxed about it now, because you say it's more accepting, we are more accepting now. Is there a sort of total different way that the client comes to you?
There is. I recently had a really sort of famous consultation, and he was really open to, sharing his experience.
His story.
Yes. Once he has the procedure done. But then I also recently had a sort of TikTok a celebrity, and he, completely confidential, doesn't want to talk about his procedure at all. So it's still split down the line.
It's
really.
having that balance, isn't it? And obviously everything you do talk about is in confidence, and then
Of course.
and that's part of your process, isn't it? Because some people don't want to talk about it, and some people do.
And that's absolutely fine. I find women are more open to speaking about their experience.
No surprise there.
Hair, eyebrows,
Yes,
they will tell everyone, which is lovely.
Is it with the women, is it brow or hair, or
Both.
really?
It's a lot more challenging to get to the stage where we can deem a female patient a suitable candidate for a hair transplant, because there are a lot more sort of barriers that we need to establish before we go straight to a hair transplant, such as identifying the reason for the hair loss, which isn't as straightforward as male pattern balding.
Excellent. Well, stay with us. We're going to talk some more after the break, but coming back to the break, and we'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Marie Royce Book, and Marie, we've been talking before the break. Fascinating, actually, just about the hair and the brow and the difference between the two. And actually, men are more common, really, for the hair, and brow for the women.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And but I want to talk to you now about before you got into this. So what did you do before this? I know that you used to work in fashion, and
I did, yes. So previously, I used to work in a tailoring house on Savile Row, and then after that, I worked with Leona Lewis, who's a really close friend of mine, and I used to tour with her and help her with all things fun.
Yeah. I bet you enjoyed that.
I really did. It was such a good life.
And is she supportive of what you're doing now?
She is. Yeah, she came and visited the clinic actually a couple of months ago, and she was fascinated by everything. It's so interesting. She had a look and met some of the doctors, so she was really, really interested.
And at the clinic, when you work with the clinic, is it a team of you? Is there a team of specialists? Because you're a patient advisor as well. So tell us a bit about that work and what you do with that.
So the hair transplant industry is very much collectively a team sort of organisation. So you have the doctors, the surgeons, and you have their assistants, their technicians, and people like myself who sort of help people on their journey into having a hair transplant, and we're called patient advisors. What's
kind of driving this? I know that, we've said celebrities and TikToks, but why now? Why now have we suddenly seen such an increase?
I think we've all tried to understand this, because there certainly has been an increase, and one of the reasons I think is why there has been an increase is because ever since COVID, we have been changing the way we work. So instead we would have, meetings like we're having right now, and speak face to face with one another. But now, due to Zoom meetings and video conferences, we're sort of looking at ourselves and being much more aware of our appearances. And I think also with the rise of social media, that doesn't help with, just general comparison with other people, and
of course that affects mental health. I mean, mental health. I know that you're a big campaigner for mental health awareness, and it's something, isn't it, that all these sorts of things, how we look, how we're perceived by others, it's particularly in our younger generation, is becoming quite significant, isn't it?
It is, and I don't think it's going anywhere. It's just the way of the world now. I think, especially because of social media, we are sort of judged by our appearances, and that is the main focus at the moment. And with apps where you can alter your appearance,
that's it. You can alter everything, can't you?
And that's not real life. So if you can sort of change it in real life with hair transplants even, I think more people are open to investigating the procedure.
Yes, and presumably you work with people who've had cancer and other diseases that cause hair loss.
Yes.
Is that something that you take very seriously?
So seriously. I have lots of different patients that come to see me that automatically think that they can have a hair transplant procedure, especially I mentioned earlier with women, it's a lot more challenging to get to the place where we can just say, right, you can have hair transplant. And it's quite heartbreaking if we identify the reason for their hair loss and they've got something which is an underlying condition such as a scarring alopecia, frontal fibrosis, for instance. It might not be suitable for them to have a hair transplant because their body, their autoimmune system is attacking their hair follicles.
So it's going to reject it.
It wouldn't work. And you can imagine these women are really, or men or women are really suffering, and they want this procedure to help them through this difficult time for them, but they can't for the moment.
Now, alopecia is another condition, isn't it? That's
yeah.
on the rise. Again, what are your thoughts about that?
There have been talks that there is a lot of COVID-related hair loss, something called telogen effluvium, which is where the hair sheds excessively and can be triggered by stressful events and stressful emotions.
Stress is terrible on your body, isn't it?
Exactly.
It causes such a reaction to your body. But and I've read studies myself where it can cause hair loss.
It can.
Would you say that that's one of the contributing factors?
I believe so, yes. And not necessarily permanent hair loss contributing factors, but certainly a reason why you would lose hair, yes.
Yes, and I mean, where do you see the future with hair transplants?
I think it's getting more exciting in terms of techniques are definitely improving. I've seen that myself with my own journey. So
Yes.
my eyebrows, as nice as much as I appreciate them now, the newer techniques are much more refined and beautiful. We're using more intricate sort of tools which allow for more natural results in comparison to my method that I had, which is a bit more old-fashioned.
Yes.
And comparing the results, the new techniques are much better.
And you said that the natural look's kind of coming back. Is that
is.
how you see it in the sort of next few years? Is that going to be the next big thing, do you think?
I think so. Just sort of stripping back and returning to a nice natural appearance.
I've seen quite a lot of celebrities actually going back, stripping back.
Yes.
You know, Adele's been one of them.
Yes.
You know, Gemma Collins has been another, stripping back to, you know, natural lashes, natural brows.
Embracing, actually, just how you look authentically.
Yes.
Which is nice. I
Which is
think.
important.
Yes.
And for you yourself personally, Marie, because you do work with the Wimpole and you do other work as well, have you noticed, you know, the age? What is the sort of age group that come to you?
Oh, this is very interesting because we can, with male pattern hair loss, we can get as young as 16, you know, if they experience rapid hair loss, they're not treatable.
16?
Yes, they're not
Gosh.
treatable at such a young age, but it can vary. And I think the most recent patient that I had of mine, he was 82.
Oh, how lovely!
So it's never too late.
It's never too late, exactly. I love it. But I mean, are we getting younger though? Do you see more young people coming to you, seeking out these kinds of treatments?
We do, and we have to sort of let them down. I think they are coming in more frequently with more unrealistic results also. So I think that's an important role for me to sort of educate them on the permanent procedure of it all and make them understand that, you know, a hairline down to their eyebrow is not going to age gracefully when they turn 50. So.
Well, that's the thing, if it's permanent as well, isn't it? And, you know, regulations, let's talk regulations.
Yes.
As you're aware, you know, this is a very unregulated area that you work in. And what are your thoughts on that, Marie?
I do worry about it, especially overseas. We see a lot of people going abroad for hair transplants and come to see me to try and help them fix it, which can be really concerning because, of course, if we don't know, exactly
what's gone on,
what happened
yes.
in the procedure, it's really difficult to get involved in. So it's really important for patients to do their work, do their research, and understand exactly who's doing the procedure. So,
and of course they've got the added, you know, when they go to a foreign country, perhaps they don't speak the language.
Of course.
That must be a barrier as well, particularly when you're having sort of intricate surgery.
yes, and there's lots of intricate details that I think patients must understand in order to get the best results possible. And these intricate details can't be explained clearly through, potentially countries that don't speak the language. I've had someone that's come to see us and they had no, communication at all.
Because it's the aftercare as well, isn't it? It's not just the procedure. I'm assuming you provide aftercare.
Aftercare, yes. I honestly think the aftercare is 50% of receiving the full results, because if you don't look after the hair transplant after the procedure, it can go terribly wrong.
It's incredible. And as far as the regulations concerned, Marie, would you like to see more of that in the UK?
I would, yes. It is regulated by the GMC and the CQC, Quality Care and Commission, but I would like to see a bit more in general in the UK. We see that just in general with the hair transplant clinics, neighbouring hair transplant clinics, that we don't necessarily know exactly what's happened.
Because it's about training, isn't it? It's about training and competency.
Competency and who exactly is the team performing the surgery on patients.
And they have to be surgeons, don't they? Surgeons perform...
Yes, surgeons perform the FUT procedure, and medics may, if they are qualified, healthcare providers can perform the FUE procedure.
Which is?
The follicular unit excision.
Right,
so
okay.
That's the individual.
Exactly. So it's really important then that, that these things are well regulated, well looked after, and especially, because there is a growing interest now, so that's not going to go away, is it?
It's not going to go away, and unless this is taken care of, there can be more room for neglect and mistakes, and patients' safety is at risk, of course. Yeah.
So is there anything you can sort of forecast that you're seeing? You think, that might be the next big thing that people are going to come and see me for, as far as hair or brow transplants are concerned?
It's very challenging, but I did say natural.
Yes.
So I am seeing more unusual requests for hair transplants, so for hair transplant procedures for hair to be restored. So I'll let you use your imagination.
I love it. Well, on that note, I think we'll leave it there. But thank you, Marie. Really pleasure to join you. Thank you so much. We're just going to take a quick break, but come back and join me again after the break.
Welcome back to the show. I'm now joined by German classical singer and recording artist Friederike Krum. Friederike, lovely. Thank you so much for joining me on the sofa today. I'm very delighted to be here. Thank you for doing this. It's just, we've got so much to talk about, Friederike. You've been doing so much, and I've been watching what you're doing. I mean, first of all, we've got to talk about this jet. You're on a private jet. I've seen you on the social media on a private jet. Wow, yeah, who's that?
Well, you can't get any Ubers or taxis, so what can you do in London? You have to go on the front side. No, that was through a friend of mine who has private jets as a company, as a business. And of course, as a singer, occasionally you have to travel last minute or whatever.
Yes.
It's just one of the best ways of getting from A to B.
You work all over the world.
I do.
So let's start at the beginning. How did it all start for you?
Very humble. I just grew up in a lovely family where my parents always listened to classical music, and then I joined my mother in the village church choir, and the conductor was as well my piano teacher. And so he knew I had a certain musicality, and I loved singing. It just came naturally, and eventually I got my little solo here and there. And not only obviously I was very young, so the voice wasn't anything exceptional, but I didn't have any fear standing in front of an audience. I loved it. And I think that is a very healthy combination to have. And it just went from there, naturally evolved into applying for music college, getting in, and never looked back.
And has it always been classical? Have you tried any other? Has it always been classical for you?
The training was purely classical, but then I did start at some stage to go as well into the musical world, because I love music. It's just not classical. There's so many different genres that are beautiful. I listen to everything. I'm not at home listening to opera music all the time. In fact, if I was to listen to classical music, it would be concert chamber music. My repertoire is very diverse too. I mean, that is one of my specialities, really, that I can do the full-blown opera without microphone, filling the Albert Hall or filling Cadogan Hall without a microphone. But then I love singing Ennio Morricone or Godfather tune and crossover.
So then, obviously, my album, which you have like,
yes, I have jazz album.
So then, tell us about these. Tell us about this album. So this one first.
Somebody Loves Me, the Songs of Gershwin. Gershwin was introduced to me by my wonderful secondary music teacher. He was a big fan, and I just fell in love with the beautiful lyrics that Ira Gershwin wrote predominantly, and timeless classics about romance, and it's just timeless. It's beautiful. You cannot get enough of these words. And so I just already then was taken by a different genre than classical music. And I always wanted to do a Gershwin album. So I eventually recorded those songs with the fabulous pianist James Pearson, who is artistic director of Ronnie Scott's, the famous jazz club in London. And it was such a lovely journey to have an experience, because in the classical world, you are very regimented by rules and how you have to follow the music. While in jazz, you can just go with the flow.
Just go with the flow. Well, it's a beautiful album. I know, I think it's a beautiful album. And this one, now Chelsea Pensioners, talk about your work with the Chelsea Pensioners. So this one that you recorded, Home from Home.
Home from Home.
Home from Home.
At the time, I was ambassador of the Scarlets Appeal, and the Scarlets are the famous uniform that the Chelsea Pensioners that's wearing, the red scarlet coat that they're known the world over for. And they needed a new uniform, a bit more lightweight, a bit more easier to wear, because obviously there are elderly gentlemen and women. And it was a very heavy and warm coat they were wearing uniform. So they were, for health and safety, they got into a new uniform, and money was needed. And I helped raise almost half of it with the help of Alpha Club, and that was amazing. And in the process of that, I was recording this album with Russell Watson. Well, not album, it was the duet that we recorded, and we launched it at the sold-out Royal Albert Hall. It was amazing, with the Chelsea Pensioners on stage with us. It was
amazing. I must have been because about to say that must have been very moving.
Yeah, no, it was. It was my first time walking on stage at the Royal Albert Hall, and Russell was actually quite naughty. He was supposed to walk out with me and the Chelsea Pensioners in a dress that sold out. I mean, it's about 6,000 people there. And on the way out, he said, "You have to speak." So, what I was about to jump.
Right when you were just about to go on stage.
Yes, no, literally halfway out.
Thank you, Mr.
Halfway out. So I was finding myself addressing the sold-out Royal Albert Hall. But because I was so passionate, obviously, about the Chelsea Pensioners, and the lyrics of the song are very moving. It's about a soldier on tour, thinking of home, dealing with the mental struggle, the battles in their heads, and a very, obviously, topic that we're all addressing at the moment. And so I was just speaking from the heart. And I think because I did it that way, if I had known I had to speak, I would have probably been so nervous.
Yes, that's right.
So I was very proud, actually, of that little speech that I delivered.
Yes, and what an amazing concert.
Yeah.
I've seen snippets of that. What was the highlight of that?
Well, obviously, performing with the Chelsea Pensioners on stage was very, very moving, and we got standing ovations. And I mean, we have to be very grateful to all of these servicemen and women. And then, of course, I sang Phantom of the Opera with Ben Forster, who was West End royalty. I mean, it's amazing. It was wonderful to perform there. It's one of the best venues I can imagine to be.
Yes, and you performed. Well, where else you on the HMS Queen Elizabeth?
I've done some bad things. Well, I've done a lot of pro bono work for the military in Germany as well as in the UK. And last Christmas, I was asked by the Royal Navy and Royal Marines to perform on HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is, of course, an incredible, impressive flagship of the Royal Navy.
Did you get to discover it?
The following day, I was invited back, and it was a glorious sunny day in Portsmouth, and I had a full tour of the. I was sitting on the bridge in the leading chair, and I walked up the flight ramp, which was incredible. I mean, I was the real Top Gun feat.
If there was to be
Yeah, that was amazing. So I can't deny that. That was rather special.
Oh, lovely.
And I've been to Afghanistan. I mean, flying to a NATO camp as well, and singing there for the soldiers for Christmas, which was incredibly moving and actually difficult. I've just recounted a story while giving an interview for a magazine, because when I was out there was a suicide attack in Kabul in a school, and one of the private German volunteers who was there teaching, he was sadly a casualty, and he was brought back into the camp, and the camp went in high alert, and we took the young man back to his parents in Cologne, and seeing the coffin rolling out of a plane, it is very different if you're actually there and if you see the parents on the car going to tarmac waiting for their son. That is.
You do art for the military, for the Chelsea Pensioners.
I think it is something that a lot of the young generation doesn't understand anymore. That the peace and the freedom that we all enjoy today is thanks to those who have fought for us and for this. I'm not a supporter of using guns and weapons and general supporter of war, but I am somebody who is supporting fighting for one's own freedom and rights and liberty. And if you've seen what, I've spoken to the soldiers in Afghanistan, obviously, and during that time that they were out there, women and girls were allowed to have an education. And now look, the Taliban's back and women are tied back to whatever they're tied back to do. No education, complete suppression. It's terrible.
We can't actually probably really realise the full sort of capacity of that here in the UK, because obviously we're a free nation, but it must be,
as we tell that we have here, we take for granted, at least the young generation does. I mean, the generation of my parents, they just came out of a war, so they were rebuilding their country. They have a very different perspective, but then there was this generation that had years of no problems. And now they're all shocked there's a war in Ukraine, and they talk about it for 2 weeks and then they forget about it again because they go back to their Instagram. It's a weird thing.
It is. The younger generation do think in a different way. There's no question about that.
Generally, movies and TV series are so violent. I mean, I've not watched a single series of Game of Thrones. I mean, it's just all blood and
no, I rape them. We're one or two of the two should that what's happened.
It's kind of normal, and I refuse making that my normality.
Yes,
I stick to Jane Austen.
Quite right. You're doing so much, Friederike, at the moment, aren't you? So, and album-wise, what are you doing as far as your?
I'm with a few collaborations at the moment, and I'm working on I can't talk too much about it, go into detail, but it will be
give us a little teaser.
Combining of classical voice with a very hip, modern dance form. So that would be then played on a really large scale audiences, and I'm very intrigued to see where it's leading. I like to try out new things. I'm not I like to experiment and find collaborations, musical, very interesting.
Yes, that allows you to be, to different ideas.
Nothing Freddie Mercury doing this amazing Barcelona song with Frederica Caballero. The world was completely gobsmacked by it. And I sang with her. I mean, it's amazing to have rubbed shoulders with these people, been on stage with them, and they too were intrigued to do a combination with a modern musician, and it was a huge success.
And was there anybody that you would like to do that with?
Actually, if Adam Lambert wouldn't mind.
I'm ready here first.
No, that would be lovely. I mean, it's a fantastic song, and it has never been recorded since. And given that I have actually worked with her, and I think it would be a nice homage to Freddie and Montserrat Caballé, obviously both no longer with us, sadly, and to show that classical music is still very hip and it needs to be supported. And artists like Freddie Mercury and others have always been influenced by classical music. So it's to break down this barrier of classical music is only for the elite or those who think they're elite or whatever. It is for everybody, and it's beautiful in many different ways. There shouldn't be this hesitation.
We'll continue to talk about it. We've got to take a break. Come back and join us again just after the break.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with German classical singer and recording artist Friederike Krum. Friederike, before the break, and we were just talking about classical music and how it's changed and how the younger generation don't really kind of find this appealing. What are your thoughts on that? What could we do to change that?
Well, I think there has been for decades that sort of feeling of classical music is only for certain range of people, very elitist.
Elitist, isn't it?
Very
yes.
elitist, and you have to be very educated to understand it. And I think the beauty about music and art in general, you don't have to be educated. You just look at it or you listen to it and you feel. You don't have to analyze it. Just enjoy it, lean back and be moved by it. And music has that ability to touch you. And I think classical music is just one genre of many beautiful genres of music. I'd love to break that wall down and bring classical music into the lives of young people, even primary school, nursery.
Yes, that's actually, I was going to say that to you. If we introduced it at a very early age, primary school, for example, then it's like anything. If you get introduced to anything, you'll pick it up later on, isn't it? Ministry of Sound, for example, now they're doing concerts with 4 London Philharmonic orchestras and orchestras around the world. They're trying to bring the kind of young generation into the wonderful when you see an orchestra for the first time.
Yeah.
And opera is involved in that. You know, there's going to be opera singers.
There is the whole world of classical music or opera. I mean, it's, you know, we're talking about young children. It's about fairy tales. It's about stories that are told through music and singing. If you hook them by the story and explain how is it working backstage, how is a cello actually, the orchestra, there's so many different instruments there. In Germany, we used to have a TV series for little children that took you backstage. How does a cheese factory work? How does this work? And that is where I think we would get them to not start necessarily with the music, but start with the world around it.
You could do that show.
I am planning at the moment. It's in the making.
It's in the making.
Anybody who wants to do the sponsoring, come to me.
No, I was going to say to you, what's next for you?
Well, that is one of my big projects I'm working at the moment with,
Right.
producing a pilot. And then I'm setting up amazing events for a friend of mine who has a very, very incredible car collection. It's the only car collection in the world of this kind.
Yes.
And we're opening the venue up for private events. So that will be something really special. It's near Winchester and it's called the Rothgo car collection. It's very, very, so anybody who loves cars and is into vintage cars and,
Yes.
racing cars.
With the project, like the educational project, would that be something that you would sort of do a lot of collaborations on? Would you get other people involved?
Obviously, rock stars and pop stars have used classical music and
They
been
have.
influenced. So I would include some people like that to talk on the show and answer questions to these little children and that sort of thing. So
Yes, that sounds amazing. Obviously, you've got all these projects coming along. What would be the one thing that you would really like to do moving forward?
Well, I think this is actually a really passionate thing I'm very passionate about. Include the next generation and open up the world that means so much to me and so many other people, to give them a glimpse into this. I feel like, you know, opening the door into Narnia for them and,
Yes.
and see where it takes them. It doesn't have to be for everybody, but at least they should be given the chance.
And it's really good for mental health. You know,
Yeah.
music plays an important part, and doctors now prescribe music for patients who come to them with mental health problems.
You reach people who are either trapped in their bodies, who can't communicate, and with music suddenly they just open up and
Yes.
they find a language. And it's a universal language for all sorts of subjects. You know, you may disagree on religion, you may disagree on politics, but music is universal and it goes across all of these barriers.
And
that's
it's the power
beautiful.
of music,
Yeah.
isn't it? As you say, it's the power of music. And would you like to see, you know, perhaps the government even do more as far as, you know, making sure that music is on the curriculum? Because so
It's
many
always a
schools have lost
funding
it.
problem, of
It is,
course.
yes.
A lot of money goes into sports, not so much into music. But I think, yes, as part of this project that I'm trying to do, the TV series, I will have those discussions with the appropriate places.
Places, whoever it is. Yes.
Yes.
So you've got to musically now. Just tell them about your album, because we're actually going to play out the show with one of your songs. So
Oh,
actually,
lovely.
tell us about that.
Well, that was just a little trip into a complete different genre. As I said, I grew up with Gershwin through my music teacher and I loved it and always wanted to do an album. So I asked James Pearson and he said yes, which was lovely because obviously he's a very sought after pianist. And we just enjoyed so much recording it the way we did because we literally improvised the entire album. I sort of agreed with him on a key, which
Yes.
means the level
Oh, how
of music,
wonderful, yes.
because I didn't want to sound classical. And once we had set the mood for the album, I wanted it all smooth, nothing fast, just something you can just chill to.
Yes.
And then we just winged it, literally. And it was very stressful with
Don't
the minute.
tell them that, because say you worked hours and hours.
No, we actually really did
Yes,
wing
winged
it.
it, yes.
But I mean, you know, we had decades of training.
Yes.
People always forget. You know, there was this nasty politician who said during lockdown, "Oh, why do all musicians just retrain?" Excuse me, sir.
Yes, I
I'm doing
remember
music
that.
since I'm 4 years old. That
Yes.
is decades of hard
Yes.
training, a lot of money from my parents going into my education. I don't just retrain. Sod off.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, that was such an insult. No, anyway, but obviously we brought our long decades of training into
Yes.
this so we could wing it.
Yes.
But you can't do this with everybody.
No.
You have to have a certain,
And there has to be a connection.
Yeah.
Surely, I would think.
you have to be able to follow, to feel where the other one is going and react within seconds at times. But then, of course, when the press launch came, we sort of faced the problem. We can't reproduce it.
Yes.
Because we did make it up on the spot.
Yes.
So it was quite fun. So we didn't know either what was coming.
Yes.
So, but it was really lovely.
But it's a beautiful album.
Thank you.
So would you like to introduce the song for us?
Well, the song that you are going to see now is the song The Man I Love, which is a beautiful, beautiful love song, obviously. And funny enough, there's a little story that Lady Mountbatten actually brought it over to the UK. She heard Gershwin play that very song herself in New York, and he gave her a copy and she brought it over to the UK, and that was one way of Gershwin becoming very famous. And the royal family loves Gershwin. I mean, Queen Mother has listened to it. The Queen herself grew up with it because of the Queen Mother listening to it a lot.
That's a lovely way to end the show. Thank you so much for joining me today, Friederike. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's it for today's show. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of my guests, and I'll come back and see me again next week. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
When the mellow moon begins to beam, every night I dream a little dream. And of course, Prince Charming is the theme, the he for me. Although I realize as well as you, it is seldom that a dream comes true. To me it's clear that he'll appear. Someday he'll come along, the man I love, and he'll be big and strong, the man I love. And when he comes my way, I'll do my best to make him stay. He'll look at me and smile, I'll understand. Then in a little while he'll take my hand, and though it seems absurd, I know we both won't say a word. Maybe I shall meet him Sunday, maybe Monday, maybe not. Still, I'm sure to meet him one day. Maybe Tuesday will be my good news day. He'll build a little home that's meant for two, from which I'll never roam. Who would you? And so all else above, I'm dreaming of the man I love. He'll build a little home that's meant for two, from which I'll never